Hi there. I think I'll kick off now. A couple more people are just kind of dripping through, but that's all good. And yeah, I see some familiar faces on today. Declan, hello. Martin, Sharon, among others as well. And for those that don't know me, I'm Sam. I head up the account management team at Futrli. I've been here for a couple of years now, 2.5 years or so actually now. And today we're going to be looking through how to optimize the consolidation and tracking features. So some really good features, maybe a bit more on the advanced side, but nothing too difficult, as is always the case. But hopefully this webinar should provide a bit of clarity as to how we can do those sort of group level reporting and forecasting, as well as the tracking that we'll pull through from Zero. As always with these webinars, I will send out the recording and any material that we go through. So I'll build out some reports and things. I'll probably share them as well. And if you have any questions as we're going through today, by all means use the Q&A function of the Zoom chat thing, whatever you call it. I'll probably come to them at the end of the session. And might not need the full hour. It's a bit to go through, consolidation and tracking, but we'll see how we get on. But yeah, hopefully everyone's in from the dry. If the lightning that I haven't had yet does kill on my internet, which hopefully it doesn't, and I've said it probably will. If it does, we'll just restart if we can, but so far they've been smooth sailing. So cool, I will share my screen and we'll take a little look. We're going to start with consolidation first, and then go on to some tracking stuff. Hopefully everyone can see that screen now, which is simply the first board that loads in my Futrli account. So firstly, we're going to come to the organizations here, where we can then start the work on the consolidation. So what we would do with the consolidation is ensure that we've added the entities that we're then going to be reporting on. So we're going to effectively we're going to consolidate Real Story Productions and Apple. They're going to be the two orgs I'm kind of consolidating there. So make sure they're added first. We then need to add a third one as the group. So we then go to Add Organization. We can go to Create Manual Organization. We can then build in the details of that group. So I'm going to then select any label. I'm then going to give it a name. So for this, I'm just going to call it consolidation. Obviously, you'd put in the actual label and the actual name, as obviously as that sounds. And then we're then going to put in the last month of the year end. So I'm going to say it's November. And then click Create. Cool. That's then going to flip to this screen where we can, you'll see it's familiar to the settings of a normal chart of accounts settings in the organizations, but we've now got this extra sort of bit here where we can add what we need to from the available organizations, everything we've got linked into Futrli account, into the consolidation group there on the right. So if we click Edit Organizations, we can then add in what we need to. So we're going to add in Apple, we're going to add in Real Story, and then click Done. And now it's then there. Simple as that to consolidate it. At the first step anyway, that is how we kind of go through that. Down here, we've then got a variety of settings for how you might want to structure the chart of accounts. We've got the default one of the grouping by organization and custom groups. This is where if you open up income, for example, you're then going to have Apple and Real Story as your two kind of group levels there. And then if you open up the individual ones, you'll see the breakdown of them. I'm going to leave it as this one, but a common one when you're working through a consolidation is also grouped by identical name. So therefore you open up income, and then because your consolidation might have the same accounts, we'll see it here as like sales all the way through. That's another commonly used one. By all means, just have a look at the others, see how you want to structure it. But probably first and the middle is most commonly used, but there's 5 there because they've each got kind of value in that. We've also got in the chart of accounts this extra feature of elimination. This is where you would then create a group if there are any kind of intercompany trading going on. So maybe there's movement of cash, which we need to kind of write off. So we can create a group and then build them into here. it's another other step, really, I suppose, which we wouldn't do in normal kind of organization setup, the elimination and how you want the chart of accounts to be structured. So just have a look at that, have a play with it, make sure you've got it all set up how you need to, and then we can then go in and report and forecast on it. So we come into the boards. I'm going to build out a board for this. Again, obviously you can build it out as a printed report, but it depends on the sort of client you're working with. I'm just going to build it out as a kind of interactive report, but you can use the printed reports as well if you need to. But here I'm going to click New Board. I'm then going to rename this board. I'm just going to call it Consolidation, which I haven't spelled right. Spell check, all good. Cool, and then we can then add a card to this consolidation. So I'm going to click Add Card. And then I'm going to add a profit and loss. And use the profit and loss template there. We then expand it out. We'll then see from our organizations a list of all the ones we've got connected. And we've also got the consolidation that we've created there now. So we now select that. Then we're going to put in the kind of date settings as I would do normally. So I'm going to put last calendar month and the previous 11, meaning we've got a 12-month period. Then in the report tab, because we're looking at a variety of different items on a P&L, we don't want a chart, so I'll turn that off. Then on the columns, I don't want the variance, we're just having a look at a chronological period. Then hit done. We then got a pretty standard looking P&L. But if we now open this up, we'll see that we've got our two companies there. So that's the structure that I was talking about that I've gone with, where we can see those two split out. And again, you can open it up there and start to see what's happening within those actual companies. So we're looking at the consolidated level here. So it's a nice way to have a look at the group to see how that company as a whole is performing. Obviously, you can open up the categories and really engage with that client if you're using a board, or just discuss it over the printed report. The main thing is that we're now looking at the whole group level, which I think is quite key in situations. So that's just a standard P&L, simply where we've just added the consolidation to it. What we can now do is use some other bits. So if we use, let's go add card. I'm going to move it to the bottom of the board by clicking add card to end of board. Rather than it appearing at the top by default and then having to drag it down, I'm going to use this option here. I'm going to go to build your own. I'm going to use a proportion card, so just a pie chart. If I rename this, let's call this income. So I'm going to look at income. I'm going to see how it's distributed over the last 12 months if one company has achieved more, for example. I'll then select the consolidation. I'm going to look for last calendar month and previous 11 periods. So the same period as the table above. Go to the report tab. Here we can then change some details to turn off the table. We've got income in the kind of format of a table above, so we don't need an income there. And then down here, we've got income that's added by automatically. So if you wanted to do something else, so say you're looking at expenses, you just add expenses and then delete income. But this time we're doing income, it's fine. The reason why it's there is because it's always added to a card, so it loads. Then down here, if we then change it to be first level group and accounts, when we then hit done, we should now see those two there. So rather than it being the default of kind of all accounts or this category, we've now chosen it to be split out by the group level. And again, those kind of displays, of which, for this recap down here, these will differ depending on the structure of the chart of accounts you use. This one, it's quite a nice one. We can look at the last 12 months. We can quite clearly see a fairly even split, but Real Story seems to be pulling in a bit more income than Apple. So we're starting to build up this report, but now what I'm going to do is add a different card to what we don't use in any other org other than a consolidation, and that's a benchmarking card. This one here. I'm just going to first add card to end of board and click benchmarking. Cool. So this card is specifically used for consolidations. Again, I'm going to do income. Then I'm going to be looking at the same period. I'm going to select everything within the benchmarked organization. So that's just the two I've consolidated. Then in the report tab, income's there again, automatically. I'm going to turn off the table. I'm just going to click done. Cool. That's now looking at the last 12 months with the two firms benchmarked against each other. So we can really start to see what that company is looking like. So that's how we then build out a consolidation report. So nothing too complex, just simply adding in the relevant cards. Yeah, hopefully that was kind of insightful, I suppose, of how we can start to build it out and start to structure it and give that full group level. But obviously, this is just the one board for the group. You might then want another board for the individual entity. And that works obviously exactly the same way. Let's go call this individual entity. Add card. So we're going to do for profit and loss again. We would just simply select it as you would do any other org, because it is just a simple normal org, which I'm going to be putting in the details as that. And then just build it out. So you might then want like 3, for example, in this one, where you've got one board or report that's looking at the group level, and you've then got another one that's looking at the individual, and another one for the other subsidiary. You can also put them all onto one board or one report. You might want the CEO of the company to look at the P&L of all of them, and you could just have one report that looks at all of that. Really depends on what the client wants. You can put, like I said, multiple companies on the same report, or you can split it out if that's a bit clearer for the end client. So that is then just simply building up those two. We've then also got obviously the option to forecast. So if we go to the forecasting tab, we can then build out a forecast for the consolidation. And it's good to note here that a common question with forecasting and consolidations is, can we build on the individual level and then merge them in the consolidation? So we don't do it that way. We do it by building on the consolidation level. So let's make sure that that is the way that we kind of build that out. Because if we click new, they need to put in the details. So let's put in the fact that it's quarterly VAT. I'm going to put the end of that return at the end of the month, 37 days after, and then 20% tax. Then in here, I'm going to put in the defaults. So this is going to be the most commonly used account for the group. So I'm going to say Real Story is kind of the parent company or the main company. And I'm going to put it down as the defaults. You can then change the defaults within the forecast. It's just the, like I said, the default one that'll be loaded. Cool. Put in the defaults as you would do again normally. The only difference is that you're selecting the most commonly used one. Then hit save. So down here, we'll see that the what if scenario option is not available. So when you're building in a forecast for a single entity, that is there, but in consolidation it's not. So make sure that if you're wanting to forecast for the consolidated group, that we do it on the consolidated group level. We don't try and do it on the individuals and then match it up. And we've then got kind of the two main ones, I suppose, for this this type of organization is the create from scratch, where it's a blank one, or we've got create from last year's actuals. So create from scratch is quite good for consolidations again, because there are multiple companies. You might want to go through it individually and just ensure that everything is sent to the right account and set it up however you want to. But also we can get some really good value from last year's actuals. So we click Advanced Create on that one. Give this a name here. Let's call this, that's a rubbish name. I'm going to call it Forecast. Very imaginative. Put it for 1 year. Again, you could do a 10-year if you're really ambitious in current times, but certainly the conversations I've been having with my partners are maybe 1, 2 year, maybe 3 year at most, because that immediate future is so uncertain. It's good to just kind of keep a cap on it. And down here, we can maybe change some figures. So let's increase income by 10%. Maybe we're hoping that now we're coming out of COVID, this firm is going to start to take off a bit. We can put a credit term on if you need to, as you would do before, but I'm not going to do any of that. And then click build. And we'll see with the consolidation, it will take a second or two longer to load, because obviously it's taking, well, it's got more stuff to load, but it shouldn't take too long. There we go. So down in here, again, the structure will match what you've got in your chart of accounts set up. So in here, we've now got everything as before. And you can go in and edit any figures and then change it and so on. So that is effectively how you just build out a forecast for the consolidated group. Pretty much the same, but we then now need to start to build it out as a board. So I'm going to then build this in the board we're just looking at. I'm going to focus again on income on this one. So I'm going to go back to the consolidation. Cool. And then I'm going to click Add Card. I'm going to again put it to the bottom of the board. And I'm going to use a tracking card once more. And I'm going to scroll it across. Not tracking card, I mean a benchmarking card. I'm getting ahead of myself. Tracking I know is coming up, but not just yet. I'm going to add a benchmarking card. That's better. We can then start to build out a card for this. So we can do income again to look at the kind of past performance or costs or expenses. Let's have a look at expenses. Let's go for the same period as before, last calendar month, previous 11. Add them both on. We can then look at expenses in total. We can then take off income. I'm going to take off the table. We then got, I'm going to put a subtitle in here as well, last 12 months. Because what I'm going to do, what I'm thinking of doing, that will load, there we go. We've now got expenses for the last 12 months, and then going to look ahead, maybe for the last 12 months as well. So we now click Add Card. We can then add card to end of board. Use a report card. I'm going to expand it out. I'm going to call it expenses, maybe looking ahead as a subtitle. It's quite nice to put subtitles in if we're using like similar data or just want that extra weight to it. And also, as you can see, just places it quite nicely underneath to add the extra bit of detail. Set the consolidation again. And this time I'm just going to use just forecast data. If you had multiple scenarios, you would select the scenario here. Then down here, I'm going to look at this calendar month following 11 periods. Get rid of that 0. So it's then going to be simply looking ahead. If we then go to the Report tab, we can now turn off the table again. I'm going to put on expenses here. Take off income. And again, like I did earlier, change it to first level group and accounts. Because that will mean, if I then change the chart type to that, just to mix it up a bit, we should then get the two split out like that there. So now we're looking ahead for that full 12-month period. So it looks like Apple doesn't have any expenses at all in those few months. But yeah, that's just simply indicative of what the forecast has built out. So there we go. We've got a consolidated report looking for a variety of different kind of methods, I suppose. We've got the consolidated P&L, the different structures, depending on however you want it. We've then got income shown for the two individual companies for the last 12 months. We've then got income benchmarked against each other, so we can see how it's been performing. Expenses again for that same period. And then because the client is quite concerned about how their future might be looking, we've started to build in a bit of forecast data. So that's the consolidations there. So next we're going to come on to tracking, like I said. So if I add a new board, we can then now start to build this out. I'm going to rename this, get another imaginative name, tracking. Cool, so I'm going to click Add Card, and I'm going to start with a tracking card. And I suppose, obviously, we'd only use this card if we're using Xero's tracking. You'll see it then loads with this example data. So if you've had a different organization, obviously just change it. It would then appear with a tracking category, of which you might be multiple. And you then search for what you want to add as the tracking card. So I'm actually going to use this example company, because I don't have another example to hand, but it works absolutely fine. And here I'm going to do income again. Down here, we've got bronze, gold, platinum, silver, but I'm going to just reorder it, just so it then appears on the chart as that. Then down here, again, we can change the date settings. So I'm going to keep the same, look at the last 12 months. Then go to the report tab. We can leave on the table, but I'm going to just take it off. And then let's get it done. Let's see what it looks like. Cool. So that's now looking at income for the last 12 months, split out by tracking. You can obviously hover over any of these on a board. You have the option to see that. So that's now displayed using that card, which you wouldn't use in obviously any other situation. You can apply anything to it, and we'll use it again in a sec. But what I'm now going to do is add a P&L underneath it for each of those packages. So we click Add Card. Again, I'm just going to take the Add Card on the board and select the profit and loss. Put the profit and loss down there. So here, I'm going to put in a subtitle of bronze. I'm going to select that company again. Select my my tracking, which will be bronze. I'm going to look at just simply the last calendar month with nothing else on them. Just 10 would do. In the report tab, all of those are there, that's fine. We're going to turn off the chart as normal. We don't want any totals on there, it's just one period. And click done. Cool. So now we've got a profit and loss for that bronze subscription. Obviously, my example data is fairly blank, but we get the picture anyway. So now I'm going to add, like I said, the other packages as P&Ls alongside it. But little trick, if we've already got a kind of card that we want to use again, but just change it slightly, rather than build it out, to save a few seconds, we can click on the three little dots, click duplicate. We can then locate the board in question, called tracking. It will put it to the top, but we can then just drag it down. And then obviously it's a direct copy, so we just need to rename it and change it however we need to. So silver as the subtitle, and then silver as our tracking option. And then click done. So now we've got that package there. Similar numbers, but they are different. And we can always see as well by hovering over the tracking item what is actually being tracked there. And if we then do the same for another package, we can then drag it down. And this is why just when we're ordering cards, it's worth noting that I do see some users try to use Futrli without a trackpad or a mouse. And whilst that's certainly possible, when you're dragging cards around and working on a bigger screen, I do find it's better to use a mouse, so or a trackpad like I am. So do bear that in mind because it just makes that experience a lot more easier if you're able to kind of work in that fashion rather than look for the scroll bar, which I personally never use. I just always use, kind of said, my mouse. So, and if you haven't reordered cards, you'll find out when you don't use mouse. So yeah, use mouse. Cool. I'm going to put in same details. It's just a copy. Gold is now tracked. Click done. And I've got it there. So now it's quite nice that we've got at the top a nice visual for the client to see how income has been performing over the last 12 months. And we've then got a closer look at each individual package there. So you might also have salespeople tracked or whatever it might be. We could do exactly the same there. Cool. So we're then going to add a balance sheet underneath this. And then going to kind of look to how we would forecast with kind of tracking information. So we then click Add Card. Then going to add card ender board. I'm going to add just a normal balance sheet. I'm going to expand it all out. I'm not actually going to track any of this. I'm simply just going to be looking at the kind of complete balance sheet. Because obviously when you're building a report out, even though tracking is the key component, you're not going to be using it in every single card necessarily. So I'm just going to add a pretty standard balance sheet there. Cool, nice wall of numbers. So we're going to make that a little bit more exciting by putting a chart underneath it to bring it to life, make it a bit more easier to understand for that client really, and start to elevate it. So we click Add Card. I'm going to again add it to the bottom of the card, bottom of the board. And I'm going to add a tracking card again. expand it out. I'm going to select bank balance. We've then got our packages automatically selected. It'll always give you 4, by the way, as well. If you've got others to add, then you just need to kind of search for it by clicking see all as you would do normally. And if you only want a few, then just delete them. But if I now just reorder them again, haven't done that way well, have I? Bronze, silver, gold, platinum, there we go. And then we're going to be looking at the last calendar month and the previous 11 periods. Go to the report, type in bank. We can locate an individual bank account if you want, but I'm going to look at bank accounts as a whole. Delete income, take off the table because we've got that kind of detail above us. And then we're going to change the chart type actually. So in here, because kind of, I suppose within the one organization, all the bank accounts kind of match up, we can then have a look at a stacked area and then click done. Cool. And there's our bank balance for the individual kind of tracked categories there. So that's our full report. So we have a little recap. We go to presentation mode. We've got income split out using a tracking card. We've then got 3 P&Ls looking at the individual packages. We've then got a balance sheet. And we've then got our final bit of color at the end. So that is building out a report on actuals using tracking. And like I mentioned, we can forecast with it as well. So we go to the forecasting tab. I don't actually have, like I said, a tracking example in here, but we can certainly work through it. If we, for example, go into any of the reports, let's go to this entity here. We would, if this client was tracked, open up an account and say we want to apply tracking to Acon Wedding. We would then click on the little cog, and then up here would be apply tracking. So like this here. So this help article, which again I'll share as well, kind of walks that through. So you see here, we've got that single repeating entry, where we then got the tracking option, where you simply just select and apply the tracking to that forecast method. Really straightforward. And then when it's in, you then would report on it and forecast with it, like we've been kind of showing. So forecast and actual and looking ahead. And then one other thing as well is that when you are applying it, like we were looking at individual entities for the bronze, silver, gold, you might want to kind of apply a variety of tracking filters to your forecast. And then you want to view in the forecast area, maybe just bronze, for example. So you can then click on the tracking filters here and then just show bronze. So if you applied all of it to the full forecast, we can then quickly and easily split out those individual tracking filters so you can see what's working. So that's pretty much it. Straightforward as that. This is about applying the tracking when relevant and then forecasting with it as you would do normally. So now a few questions have come in, so I think I'll probably just jump to them now, to be fair. Cool. So a couple of questions in the chat box, okay, a couple of long ones, let's have a little read. Just I had 2 companies that had intercompany balances that netted off. One asset matched the liability in the other. Would you still eliminate the intercompany nominals? Yes, otherwise I believe they're still then shown. So yes is the answer. Another question, the feedback cannot combine entities / report in different currencies for console boards and forecasts. Is there a workaround? So multi-currency consolidation is not supported, unfortunately. So like I said, we can consolidate, that's all fine. But if we are then having multiple currencies, it just doesn't work, if I'm being honest. So unfortunately, that is just not possible. Another question, might be the same sort of question. I have a client that has 5 companies. They wanted me to build a report that showed US income tax per entity's net income. I created the consolidation in Futrli. I built the custom formula to estimate US income tax on net income. Wasn't able to show a proportional graph of income tax per entity. I'm going to have to reread that one. Client that has 5 companies Cool. They wanted me to build a report that showed US income tax per entity's net income. I created the consolidation in Futrli. I built the custom formula to estimate. Yeah, wasn't able to show a proportional graph of income by entity. I'm not 100% on that one. I presume you used a benchmarking card. It didn't look quite right. I might look into that one. I'll pass that question to the support team. I would have thought if you built a formula and then displayed it using a benchmarking card, we should be able to see them individually. So if you have an example, maybe that might be actually better. If you have an example, that report you tried to build out, if you could email it across to us at support@futrli.com, we can look into it. Because it sounds like I think it is possible, but yeah, I need to have a look at that specific issue if that's okay. Cool. Another question. If underlying zeros in different currencies, we can't consolidate them. Yes, that's correct. As I said, multi-currency consolidation is just not supported. It comes up from time to time, obviously, as you're raising the question now, but the demand is quite low to other developments that we have going on, so that's why it's just not in there, and I couldn't give a time frame as to when and if that might be a thing. If you've got particular examples on that, then do just drop the support team a message. They might be able to kind of support in some way, but like I said, it's just not supported, unfortunately. Cool. So a couple of questions in the Q&A function. See, one person has said, "We want to come to export to Excel, convert to pounds, import as a new entity and consolidate." Yes, you could do that. So that's a good workaround in a way. Depends on how much time that's going to take on each individual item. But yeah, I couldn't see why that wouldn't necessarily work. So like I said, there are some things we can do. It's just not specifically supported really. But give that a go. I think that's a good answer there. Can we consolidate a snapshot card? There's another question that's just come in. I don't think so. Should we have a little look whilst we're here? Let me just share my screen. We'll jump back into Futrli. Let's go into the boards. I'm going to go back into my consolidation board. We're going to add a snapshot card. Ungrouped consolidation. There we go. Yep, seems to be. So we can select it there. So yeah, have a go with that. I thought that was the case, that we could kind of apply consolidation to most things. So yeah, seems like it is available with the snapshot. A couple of the questions. Is there any timing to get tracking cards to work with QuickBooks Online? So yeah, that classes, I believe, is what they kind of call their tracking. That is the only difference at the moment between Xero and QuickBooks Sync with Futrli, is that it doesn't come through. There is another API with QuickBooks that the support team can try. It does work from time to time, but from time to time, I mean, it's more commonly doesn't work, hence why it's obviously not always used. But we are still in conversation with QuickBooks about them improving their end, because I believe it's an issue their end. Like I said, this API that we can switch to can then also create other issues, such as the balance sheet not quite balancing, which is obviously not ideal. So hopefully in the near future, I don't have a time frame, unfortunately, that we get that sorted with QuickBooks. But if you do have some examples, you can ask the support team and they can see if that other API works, and yeah, go from there. Cool. Great, I think that's it actually. There's another questions in there. It was just the same one that was in the chat. But like I said, yeah, that question, if you want to send over an example of that kind of US income tax one, we can look into it further. Cool. As I said, I'll send across the recording of today's session, as well as any material I think is relevant, so the reports are built out and the help article. Next week is a slightly different session in a way. We're going to be looking at how to market your services. So again, more soft skills like the last session as was on like a health check function. So hopefully that's useful. I'll put those details again in the email that I send out, so you can get yourself registered. And yeah, I hope you have a good rest of your day. Speak to you soon. Thanks a lot.